200 million years ago in the land that will one day become the country of South Africa. A small ornithischian dinosaur, an herbivore about the size of a house cat, walks up to the edge of a sandy riverbank. Balancing on its two spindly hind legs, it dips its long, slender neck and its head into the water to slake its thirst. The air is hot and dry. There's the buzz of insects all around. Suddenly, the ornithischian hears a splashing across the other side of the river. It pulls its head out of the water, only to see a carnivorous theropod dinosaur, covered in a feathery down, charging towards it across the water. Twice its size, the ornithischian has no chance if the theropod gets its jaws on it. It whips around from the water as quickly as possible, but the ornithischian then loses its footing and smashes face first into the sand. The theropod is closing, its nostrils filled with the scent of prey. At this point, it doesn't look like the ornithischian has any chance, and then both dinosaurs freeze as a massive shadow falls across them. A clawed hand, as big as a car tire, smashes into the sand next to the little ornithischian. The theropod dinosaur forgets its hunger and turns and runs. Once the ornithischian gets up, it does the same thing. If you look up, the owner of that clawed hand has a massive, long, slender neck with a small head perched at the top of it. Looking back, it's got even more massive, muscular legs and a long, arcing tail behind it. It flexes its legs and hunkers down next to the water to drink. She doesn't know it, but at this point in Earth's history, she is the largest land animal that has ever lived. Bigger ones will come after, but 200 million years ago, Ledumahadi is as big as it gets. And scientists didn't know about Ledumahadi, or the story it had to tell about dinosaur evolution, until just last week. I'm Adam Pritchard, and this is Pastime. When I think of the word dinosaur, I think of certain anatomical structures, skeletons, body plans, basically ways of putting dinosaurs together. And one of the ones that comes to mind first is that of the sauropod dinosaurs. Brontosaurus, Brachiosaurus, the titanosaurs, these elephantine bodies with long, straight, column-like limbs like tree trunks or building columns, long, slender necks, tiny heads, equally large, massive, counterbalancing tails. The sauropod dinosaurs were the biggest herbivorous animals on the planet through most of the age of reptiles. From basically the middle part of the Jurassic to the very end of the Cretaceous, a span of over 100 million years, there were sauropods somewhere on this planet that were bigger than the biggest land mammals that have ever lived. But they didn't just come from nowhere. Earlier in the Mesozoic era, in the Triassic, and the earliest parts of the Jurassic, there were the prosauropods. Now, prosauropod isn't a term you'll see in many scientific texts these days, because it doesn't refer to one big happy family of dinosaurs. It's more kind of a catch-all term for a collection of smaller families of sauropod cousins that are relatives of the true sauropods that appear later. The earliest sauropod cousins we see in the fossil record are pretty small, not much bigger than a big dog. They would have walked on two legs. They had relatively short arms, but usually with pretty big claws, especially their thumb claws. They already had the long, slender necks and small heads, and almost all of them were probably herbivores. Late in the Triassic period, most of these sauropod cousins retain that kind of basic body plan, but some are getting up towards the size of an elephant, maybe 6 tons. Once they got that big, it was probably a lot easier to put your arms down on the ground and walk quadrupedally, that is, with all 4 legs. And what's crazy to me about these sauropod cousins is I can't keep up with them. I don't think anybody can, because there are just a huge number of new species every single year. mostly from the southern continents, like South America and Africa. And with new species of dinosaurs comes all kinds of new anatomy, different ways of putting these sauropod cousins together. And that makes the story of where you get these true sauropods more and more complicated. Now, a few years ago, I saw a news story about the discovery of one of these sauropod cousins from the earliest Jurassic period of South Africa. And the news story showed an animal with massive limb bones, equal in size to those of Diplodocus, a true sauropod dinosaur from Western North America that achieved lengths of like 90 feet. And I was blown away. I didn't think one of these sauropod cousins could get anywhere near that size or that mass. And I looked for the scientific paper, but it was just a preliminary report in the news. There wasn't a paper to describe the animal then, but there is now. From the journal Current Biology, a giant dinosaur from the earliest Jurassic of South Africa and the transition to quadrupedality in early sauropodomorphs. Now this paper, by paleontologist Blair McPhee of the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, and his colleagues, describes this gigantic example of a sauropod cousin. The new animal, Ledumahadi, is based on a single skeleton that has actually been collected over a period of several decades, starting with paleontologist James Kitching, who picked up just a few pieces that he brought back to the University of Witwatersrand. And decades later, University of Witwatersrand curators Adam Yates and later Jonah Chouanier went back to the site and collected as much of the skeleton as they could. It's certainly not a beautiful, complete specimen. It's got large parts of the vertebral column, the backbone, and quite a few massive limb bones. And they paint a picture of an absolutely remarkable animal. Ledumahadi was longer than a city bus. And based on their mass estimates, it was probably about 12 tons, the size of the absolute largest elephants, and easily the same size as some of the earliest members of the true sauropod dinosaurs. As part of this research, the team cut up some of the limb bones of Ledumahadi to get a sense for its growth record. How fast did it achieve this enormous size? And the specimen of Ledumahadi that we have seems to have gotten to 12 tons in just 14 years. Considering you're starting out with a baby that's probably a little bigger than a house cat, that's a lot of growing to do in a very short time. Now, Ledumahadi is not the only giant among the sauropod cousins, although it outclasses all of the others in terms of size. It seems to belong to a newly recognized family of these sauropod cousins that lived in the latest Triassic and the earliest Jurassic of the southern continents, the lessemsaurids. Other lessemsaurids include Ingentia, which was an elephant-sized sauropod cousin that was actually just described earlier this year from South America, and Antitonitrus, previously the largest sauropod cousin from South Africa, at about 6 tons. But Ledumahadi is double that in size. Now, despite the massiveness of these lessemsaurids relative to the animals that have come before, they don't have all of the adaptations we would expect. As I mentioned earlier, true sauropods have these very long, column-like limbs, very, very straight, with the bones sort of held directly in line with one another. And if you look at other animals that walk on 4 legs, like, say, a cat or a dog, you'll see that they don't hold their legs quite in such a straight way. That's not very common in the animal kingdom. Now, if you look at an elephant, that's basically what they're doing. And we can see, based on the bones of the arms and the legs that we do have, that Ledumahadi did not have these massive, straight column legs that we see in the true sauropods. Instead, its arms and its legs seem to be held in sort of the bent posture. And previously, paleontologists have wondered if getting big requires these kind of really strong column-like limbs. Otherwise, would you be able to support such massive weight? Ledumahadi and the other lessemsaurids seem to show you can get really big as the biggest elephants, and still have this sort of bent-legged posture. Ledumahadi probably could rise up on its hind legs and walk around, making it one of the biggest animals ever to exist that could walk on its hind legs. It probably wouldn't want to do it very often because that's a lot of weight to put just on your back legs. That'll give poor Ledumahadi some serious back issues. But the discovery of Ledumahadi and these other lessosaurids really shows that big body sizes were something that these sauropod cousins were already achieving in the latest Triassic and the earliest Jurassic, and that they didn't have to have all the skeletal adaptations that we see in the true sauropods to get that big. I want to close by offering one thought about Ledumahadi. Now, South Africa is one of the garden spots of paleontology. There's an amazing record there that spans over 50 million years of the early days of the age of reptiles that preserves kind of the literal rise of reptiles from sprawling lizard-like forms that were kind of belly dragging on the ground to the much more upright cousins of modern crocodiles and dinosaurs, of course. And paleontologists have been pulling up bones in South Africa from the age of reptiles for almost 150 years. Long time. We have lots of species and some of the best exposures of fossils anywhere in the world. And yet, until just this year, we didn't actually know about the biggest reptile ever discovered in South Africa. Despite all that collecting and all that work, what else is hiding in South Africa and indeed everywhere else in the world that will make the story of life on Earth even more complicated? If you want to see some images of Ledumahadi, please visit our website at pastime.org or check out the Facebook page at Pastime Paleo. You can follow us on Twitter, also at Pastime Paleo. Please subscribe on iTunes, leave us a review, it'll help other people find the show. And with that, I'm Adam Pritchard, and we'll see you next time on Pastime.